couple of fights I want to talk about, and one of my main topics today is David Benavidez going up against Gilberto Ramirez. This fight is taking place next weekend. I will give a full breakdown and prediction on it next week. It is for two titles, the WBO and the WBA cruiserweight titles. Um, Here's the thing, I really liked the fight. I gave David Benavidez, I continue to give David Benavidez a lot of credit for taking the fight. If you recall the little backdrop, David Benavidez was calling out Canelo Alvarez, and Canelo Alvarez didn't fight, so David Benavidez moved up from the super middleweight division to the light heavyweight division, and excuse me, did well there, and immediately called out Canelo again at the light heavyweight division, and Canelo didn't do it, and he went and accepted the fight against Zerto Ramirez. And I give him credit. I like the fight. I mean, I think you're going to see two guys that are very, very similar in style. It could make for a real rock'em sock'em up fight, up close in a phone booth type fight, or it could become a real boring fight. I don't think you're going to see anything in between. I think it's either going to be a boring fight or it's going to be a rock'em sock'em. It ain't going to the final bell kind of a fight. And with that said, I think that again, I'm giving the monster David Benavidez a lot of credit. Although he's a big guy, and he claimed that he, had trouble making the super middleweight weight. He even said he had trouble making the light heavyweight weight. I could see him moving up to cruiserweight, feeling much more comfortable, preparing for the fight, et cetera, et cetera. But I also see Ramirez being the bigger guy. I mean, here's a guy that is coming in to weigh in at 199 pounds and can conceivably rehydrate and gain another 10 pounds. Maybe he's fighting at 209, 210 fight night if he even trains like that. I mean, he's a big dude. David Benavidez, he's not going to have to really worry about weight. Chances are, whatever he weighs in at, if it was me making the decision, and what I would like to see is David Benavidez not put on that much weight after the weigh-in, because if he too puts on that much weight, then I'm going to think that he put the extra weight on too quickly, and it didn't go on the right way, and that he's going to run out of gas because he's going to be overweight. Just because you have trouble making a weight class doesn't mean that you can instantly go up to the next weight class and do well. I mean, all you got to do is look at the great Terrence Crawford and see that his game, where everyone said, "Oh, he's off. He's he's been out of boxing. He's going to be rusty." When he was fighting Canelo, I knew that he was going to be prepared, that he wasn't going to be rusty. But the most important thing is that he put on all that weight, and he did it slowly. So when he was in that ring against Canelo, he didn't look like he was just heavy. He looked like he put it on correctly. And that's what I'm looking to see with David Benavidez. Gilberto Ramirez hasn't said much. I mean, he said he wants to be the new name of boxing. He wants to be that guy, which I think is great. And he's got a good opportunity of doing it. He's also said that, he wants to replace the guy who's a big name in boxing. He was referring to David Benavidez. David Benavidez is being regarded as, a top fighter, a big name. And to tell you the truth, it seems like, he's been chasing Canelo. This is a good fight for Benavidez to prove that he is an elite fighter. This is also a good fight for Gilberto Ramirez to make a statement. And I think he's got a really good opportunity. The reason why is he's a fighter that seems to be getting better. He was very raw. That's what I mean. They're both very similar. They're both raw. They're not fine-tuned fighters for sure. I mean, they'll go in there and slug it out with you, and that's what's going to make this an exciting fight. They both do that. But one of the things that I can't help but look at in this fight, concerning the monster, David Benavidez has been talking a lot about things that he's going to do after this fight. He's saying that he might go back down to light heavyweight and try to, make a fight with Canelo happen. He also says maybe I'm going to stay at cruiserweight and go after J.R. Patea. And then he says I might even move up. I'm ready to fight Usyk. This is a guy talking about a fight that, assuming he's going to win against Ramirez, because if he loses against Ramirez, all those other doors aren't open for him. They're only open for him if he beats Ramirez. If he doesn't beat Ramirez, all the critics are going to be on David Benavidez's ass. And they're going to say he never fought anybody. He never had the right fight, blah, 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 blah. The only thing he could do was move back down to light heavyweight and then, climb back up and try to dominate the light heavyweight division, which is a hot division right now. But I think he would be in a good position to take over that division by himself. But if I'm David Benavidez, I got to start thinking serious and not looking ahead. He's going to have to win that fight first. Against Ramirez, and I think it's going to be a great fight. And I don't think either one of them should look past it. And right now, if I'm looking at the way fighters are acting prior to a fight, I like the quiet, nose to the grindstone, blue collar approach, and that's what I'm seeing from Ramirez. So we'll see what happens next week. I'll break it down and give you my official prediction. The other fight I wanted to talk about was the Fabio Wardley fight against Daniel Dubois. It's for the WBO World Heavyweight title that Fabio Wardley now has. It's taking place the week after, May 9th. Fabio Wardley was the interim champion, but then Usyk gave up the title, so he became a champion. So as far as Fabio Wardley's concerned, he's really he wants to win this fight because he feels that the belt is on the line in this fight. He didn't want to be basically handed the championship, which I respect a lot. He's a real likable guy. But Danny Dubois and all the critics are anointing Fabio Wardley as the heavyweight to beat. Everybody's assuming Usyk is going to ride off into the sunset. Wardley, they keep talking about Wardley or Moses Ituma. They already got Moses Ituma in the Hall of Fame. They're working on building his statue right now. A guy that beat two names that you've heard of. One guy never beat anybody good, and the other fight was a little fishy. But yet, the so-called experts have Moses Ituma in. I've seen his name actually listed on all-time great lists already. Okay, but the truth is that Daniel Dubois is not an easy out. He's not an easy out. This is a guy. When you look at Triple D, he's fought all the big names. Look, he not only he fought Usyk twice and he lost twice, but he's got big wins over Philippe Gervik, Jarrell Miller. You could say what you want about Jarrell Miller, but he's a tough fighter. Kevin Larina, who's an extremely tough fighter. Nathan Gorman was a top domestic fighter that he fought, and of course, the destruction of Anthony Joshua. And the style that Daniel Dubois fought in the Anthony Joshua fight, I'm telling you, if he fought Usyk that way, which he did not, okay, neither fight he did not, if he fought that way, he's a tough out. And I think that if he fought that way, the way he fought against Anthony Joshua, that, Wardley's going to have trouble. Remember, Wardley, his claim to fame, I've followed Wardley, and his claim to fame is, he beat basically Frazier Clark. They fought twice. The first fight, it was a knockout, drag out, ended in a draw. The second fight, Fabio Wardley blew him out in one round, and then he beat Joseph Parker. So really, I give him all the credit in the world for beating Joseph Parker. To me, Joseph Parker, I was shocked that Joseph Parker lost that fight, but that's it. He does have power and he is exciting. I love, don't get me wrong. I love these kinds of fighters. It's just what's annoying is that, fan bases, promoters, networks are putting these guys in the Hall of Fame after one or two wins against, marginal opposition. And, this particular fight, I could see Daniel Dubois getting up for this fight and coming in. Let me tell you something about this fight and Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois, because they rushed him a little bit. Okay, if you look at his resume, he's been in some tough fights early on. I personally think that Daniel Dubois, he's young, but he's also been in some fights that didn't turn out too well for him, and this is a make or break fight for him. If Fabio Wardley knocks him out, if he gets knocked out again, give a shout out to Dela Duran, the daughter of course, the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. She's in the chat room. Sweetheart, I'm going to be seeing her again pretty soon in June for the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. Hope we see all you guys there. Go to the FloridaBoxingHallOfFame.com or check them out on Facebook for all the information. Daniel Dubois is a tough fighter. Fabio Wardley, it's going to be, again, just like I said, the Ramirez Benavidez fight are going to be, it's going to be an entertaining fight. This is another one that is going to be entertaining, in my opinion. I think that, both fights, in my opinion, are 50-50 fights.